Good day, everybody. How's it going? I'm the Tchenovstok, and welcome back to the glorious city of Tchenovstok, based in 1979. In today's episode, guys, we're going to be developing the micro district number 2. It's going to be quite similar to District 1 that we built pretty much at the beginning of the series. But what I want to do differently with District 2 is I want the entire look of the district to be different. So I guess we could say that this district may have been built in a different era, or maybe a couple of years before or after District 1. So it's just a cool idea that I thought of, and I thought that every micro district would be similar to each other but different. So you'll see as we progress into this episode, you'll notice that a lot of the building styles are a little different. Of course, the layout's a little different. This micro district is a little bit bigger than District 1. It's also a little bit more spaced out. But yeah, I used a different architecture style of buildings a little bit, and I find that the buildings that I used in this episode are a little better in certain ways than the buildings that I used in District 1. Especially like the taller buildings in District 1, they're quite low. Like the texture isn't very good compared to everything else. So in this district, I just made sure to use the best quality buildings I could find. But what ends up happening is the district looks a little older, I guess. Like I'm really unfamiliar with like the eras of Soviet buildings. I know like there's like Lenin architecture and you know those kind of things, but in terms of like Soviet blocks, I'm not really familiar. I can't differentiate between a building that was built in the 80s versus a building that was built in the 60s. But I don't know. But anyways, these buildings that I'm plopping down right here look like, I don't know, they may have been built in the 70s, like late 70s maybe. They look less modern than these sort of square buildings that you see in District 1, the ones that are like 4 buildings attached to each other. They look older than those ones, so anyways. But yeah, I mean, but like I said, like the entire layout of District 2 is going to be way different. But yeah, you'll see as I progress in this build. So the reason why I chose to build District 2 in this episode was, if you look at my demand, the residential demand is quite high, although it's not as high as our commercial demand. But what I thought of doing is pumping as much population as we can for the moment into the city, because the next couple of episodes after this one are going to be totally featured on either... I'm going to try to build as much commercial as I can just to bring that demand down. The problem is there's not a lot of like Soviet, like modernist style commercial buildings on the workshop. It's very limited. Luckily, there's a lot of industry buildings that are sort of in this era, but commercial, not so much. So that's going to be a challenge. But anyways, what I was getting at is I want to get as much population into the city for now and get that population demand a little lower than it is right now, because the next couple of episodes are going to be featured on I'm planning on building a big factory next episode, I think, and you know, that'll be pretty cool. Of course, it's industry, so I don't know how the city is going to sort of react to that, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, with this build, it was a little bit trial and error. You're going to see a lot in this episode that I'm just sort of shuffling buildings all over the place and re-plopping them down and deleting everything and starting over. There's a lot of that just because I'm not 100% familiar with the Soviet blocks, you know, how they were built, and I rely a lot on Google image searches and on Google Maps, of course, and Street View and a whole bunch of stuff. So a lot of research goes into building these sort of micro districts just because I'm so unfamiliar with them. But anyway, I think it turned out pretty cool. I really like this. I think it's a high school in the middle. And I remember talking about this, I think, a couple of episodes ago, where a lot of Soviet blocks, like these micro-district, had schools in this shape. And some of you commented that the reason for that was it's simply cheaper. So why not, instead of designing a school for every single micro-district and having everything uniquely built, of course it's going to be a lot cheaper to just have one design and use that design over and over again throughout an entire city. And what's interesting, there's also a couple of other buildings that are in this sort of shape. There was an elementary school that you probably noticed in District 1. But what I want to do in Tchenovstok, I don't want to make every single micro-district 100% independent in-game. So I know that's sort of how they work in real life, or how they used to work. I'm not sure if that's still the case. But every micro-district in real life is self-reliant. Like, you'll have a school, a high school, and an elementary school for each micro-district. They'll have like their own hospitals. I mean, I was kind of amazed when I learned about them in the first place. And thinking about it, you could pretty much live your entire life in one micro-district. Like, everything that you need is in your little block. But of course, I didn't really want to do that in City Skylines. I think it would just get a little more repetitive, and I'm not sure how the simulation would like that very much. But what I want to do is, in each micro-district, I'm going to place a sort of specialty building to serve the entire city. So what I thought of doing in this episode in District 2 is I plopped down the high school. Now, Tchenovstok is not going to be a super massive city, so one high school is probably going to be more than enough to cover the entire city. So I thought this district would have the high school to serve the entire city, and I guess we'll just pretend that it's a high school and elementary school and the whole works into one, I guess. Oh yeah, and forgive me for these American roads, guys. I was just working on Timbuktu, and I completely forgot to switch them over. I always have to switch my road like textures every time I load up the game, and yeah, because they don't, like, the mod doesn't really save what your previous choice was on that map. It just sort of like remembers what the last texture pack you were using. But I ended up changing it later again, and you'll see a little later in the episode after that, I just like re-switch back to the American ones because I forget. Like, I loaded up the game a second time and I forgot again to switch them over. So you're going to see it going back and forth from vanilla textures to American textures over and over again. But during the cinematics at the end of this episode, I fix all of that and we're good. But yeah, let me know in the comment, guys, how accurate I'm getting everything, like in each district. Of course, like, I'm relying on you guys to a certain point. You know, and looking at Google Images and Google Maps can only get me so far because I don't really know what I'm looking for. So I sort of rely on you guys to give me some keys, you know, things to look out for when building these types of cities. And so far, you guys have been really great with that. Like, I've gotten a whole bunch of suggestions on what to build in Tchenovstok. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And by the way, guys, for my Patreons, the Tchenovstok map is now available. So if you considered being a patron, go for it. You'll have access to the Timbuktu save and the now Tchenovstok save, so you can play around on those maps. But yeah, the city is coming along pretty good. I don't know if it's just because, like, it's the first time that I'm building this type of city, but I'm constantly just like zooming out and gazing at what the city looks like so far. Like, this is so cool. But yeah, so next episode, like I said, I'm probably going to go for the factory, I think, unless I have like another more useful idea that pops up. But there's so many things that I want to build in this city. So I want to build another airport for one, but I'm going to wait a while for that one because I'm pretty sure you guys are probably all airported out after the Timbuktu airport. So I'll wait a little bit for that, and I was planning on maybe doing like a military or like an Air Force base or something. But anyway, that'll be in a little while. A second thing that I was planning on building is a water treatment plant. Did I mention the factory? I think I did. But anyway, it just goes to show that like there's so many things that I want to build in this city. And what's fun is I'm not planning on having Tchenovstok being like a massive city that's going to take up half the map. It's going to be quite a small, densely populated city, of course, with like the entire city being made up of these apartments. So it's going to be fairly quick to build the city, and I figure like within the next, I don't know, maybe even before like we hit 10 episodes, the city itself is probably going to be pretty close to being complete, and we can move on to some other projects around the city. And I was just thinking the other day too, like there's so many different styles of cities that people have built on YouTube. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I just browse YouTube and I find creators that I've never heard of before, and you know, like how awesome. Like the City Skylines is really turning into like this limitless sandbox game. I've said it before, like the only limit to this game is your creativity. Like if you can even go as far as like creating your own props if you're missing a certain prop in your save game. It's really unlimited just how much detail you can get into. Like you can go down to the little minute details. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of City Walk, City Wall, his new Mars series on YouTube. So I only actually recently discovered his channel, maybe a couple of months ago, right when he started his Mars series. And I gotta say, like, I'm so deeply impressed by his level of dedication and the level of detail that he's putting into his build. It's absolutely astounding. If you guys haven't checked him out yet, I suggest you do. You guys won't be disappointed, I gotta say. But anyways, I'm just rambling on now, but I'm just so amazed with like the different styles of cities, different creations that everybody creates. It's just super fun. You know, like the Soviet style city that I'm building is one of like hundreds of different styles that I've seen thus far on YouTube and Reddit and whatever other platform. But yeah. So back to the game, what I'm doing right now, of course you guys probably guessed it, a soccer field or football field. I'm not even sure if the Soviets used to play soccer. Or, well, I mean, I would assume if they did before, they probably still do now, but I'm not sure if that was a thing. I was kind of thinking about, like, the Cuban Missile Crisis, how the Americans were discovering soccer fields all over Cuba when, you know, they knew Cubans mostly played baseball. So I was kind of thinking of that scenario while building the soccer field. I was like, what did the Soviet citizens tend to play back in the day? And I don't know, I should have researched it. Like I'm assuming it's probably a fairly easy answer to find, but I just felt like building my own custom football field because the ones that I had from the workshop were a little too big. They didn't fit in the little square I had to play with, so I figured why not just build my own custom little field and make a nice little park out of it too. And yeah, here you see me placing down some play equipment. So this, I'm sort of pretending that it's a high school / elementary school in one building. It is fairly large, so I guess it would make sense for it to be both. So that's why you have that play equipment in one particular corner. And like in my region, there's multiple schools that it's like a middle school or elementary school / high school in one. I'm not sure if you guys have that where you guys live, but in my region, it's actually fairly common. And what I'm doing right now is just basically placing some filler buildings and detailing the area just a little bit more. So when I have some open spaces within these blocks, I figured, you know, why not place down some little shops, some little boutiques or whatever. It's just a little detail that I noticed when looking at various Soviet cities. And a lot of times what I've noticed, I'm not sure if this is like common everywhere in the former Soviet Union, but you'll often have a normal apartment building, but the first floor is all shops, or part of it is all shops. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a very particular situation. First of all, American roads again. Second of all, look what happened to the terrain when I booted up the game. So this was like the next day after working on some detailing and stuff. So I booted up the game and these paths right here just totally screwed up the terrain. Like, look at this massive spike here. So this actually happened before. In District 1, I had this problem with, I think they're 2-meter wide paths, and they're made by Bad Idea, and they look absolutely fantastic, and they're fairly popular too. I've seen a whole bunch of creators use them. They're really great, and they're somewhat tricky to work with, but in most cases, it's worth the pain just because they look super good. But I don't know, like, I'm not sure if it's like the new version of the game, the new Sunset DLC that kind of screwed with the patch or something, but they're just pretty much unusable. Every time that I would boot up the game, I would just have these random spikes going into the ground or coming out of the ground, and they were impossible to fix. It wasn't so much of a problem in District 1. I've had a couple of areas that did it, but it really wasn't bad like in District 2, so I figured, you know, maybe it's something with the new patch. I don't know, but unfortunately I was forced to find some other paths on the workshop and use those instead. I forget who created these ones here, but I can link them down in the description. They're equally as great, I find. The only thing that I would rather have, I kind of wish that they were pedestrian paths rather than bike paths. Not a huge deal. Whatever, I'll just have a bunch of bikes rolling around instead of people walking, so not the end of the world, but we'll probably just have to use these paths from now on. It's kind of a shame though that, you know, the base game doesn't have some narrow paths like this. I think the default game uses 8-meter wide paths. It's kind of a little extreme for, you know, these kind of situations. And I think these paths right here are 3 meters, so 1 meter wider than Bad Idea's paths. But whatever, it's not a big deal. But yeah, we're pretty much reaching the end of this episode. I'm just plopping down some trees, and I'm trying to really get it to where it's sort of consistent with District 1. I don't want to plop too many trees, and I don't want to not plop enough. So I'm kind of basing myself on what we've created so far to place down these trees. And I'm not really sure how realistic these trees are, because the city is based in 1979 and the city is virtually brand spanking new. A lot of these trees look a little too mature than they really should, but whatever. I find it looks really nice. So yeah, as long as it looks good, that's really what matters. But anyways, guys, that's it for this episode. I really hoped you enjoyed it. It was really fun to produce a Tchenovstok episode after many weeks of not working on it, so it was a nice change. But yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out, go check out my Patreon page, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. And also don't forget to subscribe to the channel for many more videos just like this. And until the next episode, take care, guys.